All right, so we know that the police have been doing raids in various areas to reclaim stolen goods after the week of looting. And today they were in Soshanguve, which of course is north of Pretoria, and our reporter Manqoba Mchunu was there. Manqoba, thank you so much for joining us. Just talk to us about exactly what the police were doing today, bearing in mind that there has been so much anger at the police taking food from poor people.
Well, Sally, what was happening today in Pretoria was one of the operations that, of course, fall under Operation Prosper, which is the operation that has been actually given the go-ahead by the President, which includes, of course, the deployment of the SANDF members. So today, essentially, they were continuing with those operations, focusing specifically on some of the hotspots that had been affected by the unrest, as well as the looting and destruction that we saw last week. And today, they went to various malls in and around the north of Pretoria, basically patrolling the malls and also going to taxi ranks. But also we did see some officials from Home Affairs who were also looking at illegal undocumented migrants in the country, and there were several arrests that were made in this particular regard. But also just looking at crime in particular at some of these hotspots. You'll know that areas like Soshanguve are quite infamous for crimes like hijacking of vehicles. So they were also looking at vehicles, checking the papers and documentation of some of those vehicles. So it was more of a crime operation more than looking at some of those areas that had been looting, because Soshanguve itself was not affected severely by the looting sprees that we saw last week. But the community members said that residents welcoming the action by the soldiers. They're saying that they commend it because they feel much safer. But take a listen to what some of the community members had to say.
We feel safe to have the police and the metro, and then Ramaphosa ka he aile aira merko hai ka batlisa mo mabopane, then ka he looting this thing like since etoma re labahela le ma security ama mabopane ka tlhokomelo e ba re fileng yona.
All right, so Manqoba, I just want you to clarify, because we know that Mamelodi Mall, which is around Pretoria, was looted. Are you saying that they weren't recovering looted goods today, or was that part of the whole process?
Well, today, Sally, they were not really confiscating any goods. In fact, I spoke to them, and one of the reasons why they were not specifically focusing on collecting some of those looted goods is because they said that they didn't have a search warrant for that particular operation that was taking place. And you recall, Sally, that some of the malls in the north of Pretoria were not severely affected. In fact, we heard that only one shop was looted at Soshanguve, one of the malls in Soshanguve, which is Central City. So there wasn't a lot of looting that took place in that particular area. So today's operation was more focused on dealing with some of the crime hotspots in that area, and to actually look at whether or not the police can actually use some of the intelligence that they've received to try and deal with some of the issues in those particular communities.
Absolutely. I know that you've been looking at the story generally, and the issue, and particularly the story you covered yesterday, around whether law enforcement had the right to actually go into people's homes and take back looted goods, particularly the food issue. So just tell us a little bit more about those discussions that have been underway today.
Well, Sally, we did speak earlier on to the SANDF about these particular search and seizures that have been conducted. And of course, their view is that they are well within their rights to have conducted those search and seizure operations in some of those hotspots where they believe that the looting took place in those particular areas. But you recall that, Sally, the army has simply been deployed to act as a supporting role to the South African Police Service in some of those operations that they are currently conducting. And so the army is saying that they believe that there was nothing untoward in terms of them accompanying the police. It's part of what they've been mandated to do by the president. And of course, on the issue of, some of the operations being illegal. There were certainly some complaints from community members who are saying that, some of these actions or some of the actions that were conducted by police and the soldiers were illegal, given the fact that there were no such warrants that were produced at some of these raids. But secondly, the fact that they actually went into some of the houses where people were not inside those houses, and also confiscated some goods that possibly belonged to some of the residents. But on that particular issue, the SANDF saying, Sally, it is the police that will actually have to answer to that, because they are the ones who are responsible for the operations, and they are simply just providing a supporting role to the police. But take a listen to what they have to say on this particular issue.
Today's operation, in terms of what you said, search warrant and stuff like that, the commander of the SAPS did inform us that they didn't have it in place, hence you didn't see us going to the people's houses. But I believe the one of yesterday, for them to move into other people's houses, they had to have authority to do that. I believe if when they move into other people's houses, yes, they do have to produce it if the resident, they do request for it, but they did, when they move in, they do inform the resident that we are here to do this and we have authority to do so.
Yeah, and there's been so much discussion. Let's just listen to a legal expert on this issue of police being allowed to come into your home in what I think they call proactive searches. Here's Ulrich Rue.
Rights to do so, because they have grounds to believe that a crime has been commissioned. Obviously, the looting of items, when a person is not entitled to it, is the commissioning of a crime. And secondly, they do have grounds to believe that if they were to apply for a search warrant, then that application would have been granted to them, but they had to act swiftly to retain get the looted items back, and having to go to a court to get the warrant, first get the warrant and then come back, would most likely render the entering of the premises completely null and void, because the looted items would have been removed. The items were taken unlawfully. They were stolen without these people being entitled to take them, and now it's being recovered, and it is really as simple as that. No action can be taken against the police or the army for retrieving these items and entering a person's premises if there are stolen items there.
Manqoba, is it clear what exactly happens to food that's seized? My understanding is food is different to other goods, and that actually is not going to be destroyed.
Well, Sally, there has been conflicting messages from government when it comes to this particular issue. Of course, it has been an issue that has been quite concerning to some of the community members, especially those in informal settlements that were raided yesterday, who saying that, the reason why they looted these goods is simply because they are living under poverty, and they simply cannot afford to buy more food for themselves. So one of the concerns is what happens to this food. But earlier during this week, Sally, we did hear the minister in the presidency saying that they will be using some of these looted items as evidence in court, and saying that after that they will then be destroyed. But yesterday again, when speaking to one of my colleagues, Govan Whittles, during an interview yesterday, the minister saying that in fact some of these looted items will not be destroyed. So I guess perhaps he was referring to the food that has been confiscated. But the clarity has really not been provided at this particular stage what exactly will be destroyed and what will be kept.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for keeping us up to date on what has been a very contentious issue this week and wrapping what we know so far. Thank you very much. That was our reporter, Manqoba Mchunu.